I made this. I feel so cool. Hey guys, I hope this is working. Okay, anyway. Oh wait, let me stop moving because this mic sucks. Ugh. Hey y'all, welcome back or welcome to my channel if you are new here. Today's video will be another tutorial. I'm gonna save all the apologies. We're not gonna talk about what took so long. Life just be lifing, and that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes we all just need to take a little break, handle some things, boom, we back at it. But today's video will be on my crochet jersey. This one's a little bit different, you know, compared to the one that you guys did see. However, in a good way. Like, I would have did you guys a disservice if I would have did it exactly like the pink jersey that you guys seen, just because I made that as a beginner. We had to update the stitches, the everything. Like, that was another reason why it took so long. But anyway, as always, if you guys have any comments or concerns, please leave that down below. I love advice. If you are new here, please, 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 please keep in mind that I am new here as well. And by new here, I mean new on YouTube. So please don't judge, okay? I tried to go in as much detail as possible, so if you guys do get confused anywhere, please let me know. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know how you guys liked it. I would love to see all you guys' recreations, so if you have me on other social medias, definitely tag me. I try to see everybody, try to comment, all that, share, show love, because y'all showing love to me. I hope you guys enjoy. We're going to keep this short and sweet. The tutorial is already long. I'm not going to lie. Like I said, I tried to go into detail, so okay, let's just jump right in. Let's just go. So to start off, we are going to begin with a slip knot, of course, and we're going to chain in multiples of 4. So for example, I will be chaining off 72, and that is just to go best with the granny stitch that we'll be doing today. So you can do any amount, but for example, I will be doing 72 today. For anyone that usually wears a size small like me, this amount of chains I am wearing will not fit like a small. It is oversized. It fits more like a large. So do keep that in mind and hold the chain up once you're done chaining off however many that you do up to your body, just so you know if the width is okay for you or not. So after I chain 72, I'm now going to add 6 more chains to the end of that, and that will pretty much take the place of the double crochet that will start and end our rows. So this will start the double crochet for the next row, and then we'll begin our granny stitches. Now we're going to count 6 stitches from the hook and go into that 7th chain and create 1 double crochet. We're then going to add 2 more double crochets into that same stitch. After that, we will chain 1, skip 3 chains, and into that 4th stitch from there, we'll create another granny cluster of 3 double crochets into 1 stitch, chain 1, skip 3 chains again, and we'll just keep repeating that all the way until the end. I am going slow these first couple of rows just to make sure no one gets confused. So if you do already get it, you can speed past this, but this is just for anyone that does need a little bit more time to watch. And this is how it should be looking so far. Now, once we make it to the end of the row, we should have 4 chains left. I have 3 since I always like to tie mine off and knot it, just so I don't have to worry about it becoming loose, but that's okay. I'm now going to chain 1 and create 1 double crochet into that very last stitch, just so it mimics the other side of this row when we first created the first chain 6. I'm now going to chain 3, turn my work, and create 2 double crochets into that next following space. The first chain 3 will count as a double crochet once again, and then after that we'll chain 1 and create 3 double crochets into each space. And just make sure you are chaining 1 in between each granny cluster like we did the first row. To finish the second row after we chain 1, we're then going to add 2 double crochets into that last space. We're then going to find that third stitch from the 6 chains we started at the beginning, and we're going to do 1 double crochet on top of the third stitch. To begin row 3, we're now going to chain 4, turn our work, and we're then going to create 3 double crochets into the next space. So it's a little bit different from row 2. However, we will pretty much just keep repeating row 2 and 3, and I will show you guys how to end off row 3. I do apologize for not being all the way into the camera view. I kept looking down at my work and wasn't paying a lot of attention to my camera, so I do apologize about that. But I do hope you guys understand what I'm saying. Like always though, just please comment if you guys do get confused. In the last space for row 3, we're going to create 3 more double crochets like before, chain 1, and then we'll do 1 double crochet into that very last double crochet from the previous row. As you guys can see, after you do that last double crochet, each end of each row should mimic the other side. Just like we started off with just the chain 4, we have the chain 3 on the other side to mimic a double crochet on each end. We'll now repeat row 2 and chain 3, turn our work, and create 2 double crochets into the following space, and then you'll repeat row 2 and 3 back and forth. I did a total of 30 rows. Just make sure you hold it up to your body and see if you like it. This light blue will be below my bust to my hips pretty much. So that's how I'm measuring mine. So just keep that in mind when you guys are measuring the bottom half, since we will have a top part of each panel. After I create 30 rows, I'm then going to chain one and just show you guys what it looks like so far before we move on. So after that, I'm going to turn my work and create one single crochet into each stitch, and that is including the chain ones in between the granny clusters. And keep in mind when you are doing your first stitch, go into that very first stitch when you do single crochets, because we will do other rows of single crochets in other colors. So I do want you guys to keep that in mind, because the double crochet rows will be a little bit different. So when you are doing these single crochets, once again, just make sure you are going into that very first stitch and not skipping it. As you're coming to the end of your row, make sure you are putting your last single crochet into the top of that first chain 3 of the previous row, just to make sure you're not missing any stitches. And for the last single crochet, I'm not going to finish it with the same color. I'm then going to pick up my new color and pull it through the 2 loops instead, so it has a clean color switch. Once I pull my new color through, I'm now going to chain 1, pull up my yarn and cut the previous color yarn and tie those 2 together and knot off so I can start the next row. I'm now going to reinsert my hook, pull my yarn, turn my work, and then I'm going to repeat what I just did and do 1 single crochet into each stitch like I did before. And if you're not changing colors as often as I am, you can obviously just skip this part. I will suggest doing it though, just because it does make it look more jersey-like the more colors you do. However, do as you please, of course, it is your project, but I did want to just throw out that tip. And we'll just end our row like we did the previous row, making sure you get that last stitch in. We're now going to chain 2, turn our work, and then we're going to skip the chain closest to the chain 2 and create a double crochet into each stitch. So it's different than the single crochet rows where we do the single crochet into that very first stitch. Anytime we do a double crochet row, you want to skip that first chain, just because you will end up increasing by accident. So just make sure you are making sure you don't go into that first stitch. And this is how it's looking so far. We're just going to work a double crochet into each stitch all the way until the end, and then I'll meet you guys once I get there. Once I make it to the end, I'm going to chain one and cut my yarn off before I change colors. The reason why I don't change colors on this end is because I want all of my stitches facing the same way. So now I'm just going to add my yarn to the other end, insert my hook, and then chain one, and then I'll create one single crochet into each stitch. So now pretty much all I'm gonna do is repeat what I just did with the dark blue with the orange. So one row single crochet, one row double crochet, and then the last row will be single crochet again, and then I'll meet you guys back there again. So I actually misspoke in this part and I didn't realize it. I only did 2 rows in the dark blue. For the orange, we'll be doing 3 rows, which again is the row of single crochet, then a row of double crochet, and one more row of single crochet before we change colors again. So now I'll be adding my white yarn like I did every other color switch, with chaining one and doing one single crochet into that very first stitch. And we'll just be doing one row in the white. So it'll be one row of single crochet before we switch colors again. Once again, I do want all of my stitches facing the same way, so once I get to the end, I'm going to cut my yarn off before I change colors, then add that blue to the other side once again, and we'll do one row of single crochets. Once we get to the end of that row, we're then going to chain 2, turn our work, and create one double crochet into each stitch. Once again, when you are working with double crochets, just make sure you're not putting one in that very first stitch, just so you're not increasing. So skip one stitch and then one double crochet into every stitch. Now once you finish this row, you do want to cut off your yarn and create a second panel exactly like this one, and then don't cut off your yarn on that one. We're then going to start on the front panel of the jersey. So for this part, to create the v-neck of the first panel, or front panel I should say, you're going to find the innermost chain or stitch, I guess. And how to do that is you just take your beginning amount of stitches and divide it by 2. So since I started off with 80, I just counted to 40, and then I just put a bobby pin in between that stitch and the next stitch, so I can have 40 over here and then 40 stitches over here. And then we're going to attach our yarn to whichever side is that has all your stitches facing forward. That's where you want to go, to the right of that. I'm going to attach my yarn, and we're going to continue to do regular double crochets. I'm just going to bring up the loop and chain 2. Sorry, I'm trying to cover my ends or hide my ends while I'm doing this. But I chain 2 in that first stitch, and then we're going to do regular double crochets up until we have 3 chains left. So that would be this one, sorry, 3 chains. So we're going to do regular double crochets up until we get to that 4th chain from the stitch marker, so you can have 3 left. You want to do your last double crochet in this one, and then we'll come back once we get there. So now that we are 3 stitches away from that stitch marker, I'm going to do 2 double crochet together for the 2 following stitches. So you're going to yarn over, place your hook into the next stitch, pull your yarn through, pull over, pull through 2, yarn over again, but do not pull into the next 2. We're going to go into the next stitch, do the exact same thing, pull through 2, and you should have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3. So that'll be your decrease, and then you'll do 1 regular double crochet into that next stitch. And then we're not going to chain or anything like that. We're just going to turn our work. Yarn over, do a double crochet into that same stitch that you're working out of. And then we'll do another decrease. So pull through just 2, yarn over again, go into the next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 3. And then you'll do regular double crochets all the way to the end. And we're just going to repeat that for the next following amount of rows. And then once we get there, I will show you guys how to do the next part, but essentially we're just repeating what we just did. So you're going to go all the way to the end, come back till you get to 3 more rows again. You'll do that decrease in the 2nd and 3rd row. Sorry, not row, 2nd and 3rd stitch. And then the last stitch, you'll do a regular double crochet, turn your work, and just keep repeating. But I will be showing you guys again, just in case it was a little confusing. Okay, so now that we have 3 stitches again, we're going to do our decrease, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, go into the next stitch, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 3, regular double crochet into the next stitch, turn your work, regular double crochet into that same stitch, and then 2 double crochets together. And we're just going to repeat that. The amount of rows I'm going to do is to be determined, so I will put that up here somewhere when I figure that out. But yeah, you're just going to keep repeating that. And then we're going to move over to the next side and repeat the same thing. But I will be showing you guys how it looks on one side once we're done and how many rows I did. So I forgot to show you guys the other side once I finished it, but I really did just do the exact same thing to the other side and just did 10 rows on each side. Now the second panel is super easy. We're just going to add our yarn and do 1 double crochet into each stitch back and forth for 10 rows just to match the height of the first panel, and there will be no decreasing or increasing. We'll just be working back and forth until we get to 10 rows. Once we finish the back panel of 10 rows, we're now going to lay our top panel on top, and you want to make sure your right sides are touching each other inside and the wrong sides are facing outward before we start stitching them together. We're then going to start attaching the shoulders of both panels together, and by doing that, I'm just going to attach my yarn into both panels of the first stitch, and then I will slip stitch into the back loops only of every stitch up until I get to the V-neck. Once I finish slip stitching into my last stitch, I'm going to cut a knot off my yarn. At this point in time, I do suggest trying on your work and seeing if you do like the way it fits before moving on, just in case you need to add or decrease rows. And just make sure before you move on, you turn your work right side out again before we start working on the armholes. I'm now going to count 3 rows down on my light blue rows of the granny stitches and attach my yarn through both panels to start the armholes. I'm then going to bring up my yarn and chain 1. I'm now creating 2 single crochets into that first space. I'm then going to create 2 single crochets into each of the previous rows that we worked on at the very end of them. And just go very slow on this part since the stitches will be kind of pushed together. But each row that you did previously, we're just going to do 2 single crochets into each one. So even with those previous single crochet rows, I'm still working 2 single crochets in them. The reason why I'm doing so many stitches is because I do want my armholes to to fit bigger and looser. So I did want to just show that I am working in those as well. They will be tighter, a little bit harder to get into, but I did just want to show that. I'm then going to continue this all the way around until I get to that very first stitch that I started the armholes with. Once I do get to where the panels meet each other and where we stitched previously, I am going to make sure I get in both sides of the the slip stitches that I did previously, just to make sure there aren't any gaps or holes when I am wearing it. Once I work my way back to that very first stitch, I'm going to slip stitch into the first stitch that I made to end off the first row. I'm then going to chain 2, turn my work, and create 1 double crochet into every stitch. And like we did previously, you're going to make sure you don't work into that very first stitch so you don't increase anymore, since the armholes will already kind of be bigger. So just make sure that you are skipping that once again, and we'll just keep creating 1 double crochet into each stitch until we get to the end of this row. After I do my last double crochet of this row, I'm going to slip stitch into the first chain 2 that I made, turn my work, and then repeat what I just did with the previous row and create 1 double crochet into each stitch. So I will be repeating these rows of double crochet until I get my desired length. I do change my color again multiple times, so I will be showing exactly what I did as far as the color pattern switches if anyone did want to recreate that. But this is where you can just have fun and switch up the colors how often as you want. Once again, the more colors you have, the more jersey-like it looks, so I do suggest you do that. But I will be sharing exactly what I did and how many rows of each color I had. At the end of those double crochet rows, I did add a single crochet row just to stiffen the armholes up a little bit. So I did want to show how I did that. I just reattached my yarn into any stitch pretty much, chained 1, and then I created 1 single crochet into each stitch. Once again, creating that first single crochet into the very first stitch of the previous row. And once I finish my last single crochet, I'm just going to slip stitch into that very first stitch that I made at the very beginning of this row. Then I will chain 1 and cut my yarn off and weave that in. I'm now going to turn my work to start stitching up the body of the panels. I do want to turn my work inside out again before I do so, just to make sure it looks cleaner. I'm going to use the same color yarn and attach my yarn to the very top of where the panels meet that's open, and then I'll tie off and then I'll just slip stitch as best as I can. This will be a little bit harder since the stitches are made up of chains, so you pretty much just want to stitch each stitch together without going too tight or too loose. The best way to do it is keep your panels as even as possible and just get the stitches as close as you can to match on both sides. Once I make it to the end, I'm going to turn my jersey upside down and start creating single crochets to border off. In that first space, I'm going to do 3 single crochets, and then once I get to those granny clusters, I'm going to create 3 single crochets as well under them. That way I'm not taking away from the amount of stitches that was there beforehand. So next we're going to work on ribbing our neckline. We're just going to attach our yarn to the stitch to the left of when we first started decreasing to make the V-neck. We'll attach our yarn and do 2 single crochets for each row. So it'll either be the last double crochet of the row, you'll do 2 single crochets, or the last 2 chains that you made for the next row and create 2 single crochets in there. So back and forth, we'll just create 2 single crochets into each row. And then when we get to this corner, I'm going to do 1 single crochet instead of doing 2, just so I can stitch it closer together. And we'll just go all the way around. Now once we get to the back, each stitch should just be one single, sorry, not one single crochet, but one double crochet facing upward. So now, excuse me, so now we're just gonna do, instead of 2 for each row, we're just gonna do one single crochet into each stitch and then repeat what we just did on this side, and then I'll meet you guys back over here. So now we're going to chain 4 plus 1, so a total of 5. Then we're going to skip 1 chain from the hook and single crochet into the second chain from the hook. And we'll create 4 single crochets. After the 4 single crochets, we're now going to slip stitch into the next 2 foundation stitches. So this will be my next one. Then a second one. Then I'll turn my work. Sorry guys, my allergies are horrible. But now we're going to repeat that into the back loops only of the 4 stitches that we just did. 4 single crochets, sorry. So you'll find that first one, and if you get confused, just count 3 stitches away from your working yarn, which will be your first stitch. Then we'll just single crochet into the back loop only. After your 4 single crochet, you're now going to chain 1, turn your work again, and we're going to repeat the 4 single crochets in the back loops only, slip stitch into 2, turn our work, and just keep repeating that all the way around, and then I'll show you guys how to connect it, but I'll show you one more time. So skip the chain you just made and create 4 single crochets in the back loops only. The first one will be the hardest one to get into. Three and 4. And we'll slip stitch into the next 2. And if you get confused on that part, just pull up your work and you'll see where it's stretching from. That's the last one you just worked in, so you'll go into the next 2. Turn our work, and just going to repeat that all the way around. And then I'll meet you back once we get to the last stitch over here. Now after I slip stitch into the next 2 foundation stitches, I'm going to chain 1 and pull my yarn through, and make sure you just cut off enough to stitch up the 2 sides of the neckline together. I'm then going to attach my yarn to my needle, and then I'll start attaching that part of the neckline to the back of the first part of the neckline. So I'll go in those back stitches and just start matching the stitches up and attaching it. pretty much so the neckline can overlap each other. After I match up and attach that last stitch, I'm now going to run my needle and yarn down those stitches and come back to the front of the V-neck so I can start attaching the other side of the neckline on top of the neckline we just sewed down so I can overlay that one. Once I finish that, I'm going to lay the other side of the neckline on top, and then I'm going to start matching up those stitches to the front of that first part of the neckline we sewed down to the front of those stitches. And then as always, I'm just going to feed and weave in my yarn to hide those ends. So this is how the neckline should be looking so far. So unfortunately for my number one, I wasn't recording and didn't know, which sucks. However, I am going to try to explain what I did. I started off with chaining 9 and then I worked back and forth half double crochets for 25 rows. And then once I got to the 26th row, I just pretty much decreased for 5 rows exactly how I did the neckline, just until I got to a point where I feel like it looked like a 1. Pretty much it was a freehand, but I feel like it was pretty easy, and I will put it up on the screen just so you guys can follow along if you are putting a number 1 on your jersey.
A few moments later.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. I like now want to recreate my pink one, but I'm not gonna. Like, look at this. Look at the ribbing. Look at the ribbing, guys. I feel so cool. I feel so cool. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys the finished look. I wanted to point out that I did not use a steamer to block this. I know people don't recommend it, but I actually like to wash and dry mine, you know, machine wise, and it just creates like the perfect drape. I feel so cool. Like, I made this. Guys, I feel very much cool right now. Yeah. Hey, I made this if anyone cares. Okay.